This morning, we're going to do an overview on Workforce Go, looking at creating and customizing reports. Today's agenda, we're going to go through an introduction to Workforce Go reports, including how to use the filters when using these reports, using the help and search menu. We're going to look at our start screen using the widgets. And the reports we're going to dive into are going to be the employee information report, viewing time off accrual balances, and viewing employee detailed calculated time. And if there's time at the end, I'll show how we can add one of these reports to our dashboard. So as we go through this, if you have questions, please use the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on that as we go through. So in our introduction, Workforce Go has multiple reports that are available in the system to help with viewing and managing relevant payroll information. However, the default reports that they provide may not fully share information we would like to see without having to view employees individually or to view multiple reports to access the information, which can make it difficult or time-consuming for us. So the purpose of this overview is to show the basic concepts of accessing and customizing reports. And the first thing I want to look at is filters. Filters are really helpful to us if we're looking for specific records within the data we're looking at. If you're familiar with Excel, filters works just like Excel. And it's important to understand them because it affects the information that might become available to us. So I'm going to slide the PowerPoint off screen so we can start to go over a filter. So I'm going to go into one of the reports just so we can look at filters first before we get into anything else. So filter options are located below the column header and can be selected using the drop-down box. So a column header is like this here. We have first name is a column header, and below that is the filter. So this is what allows us to start to filter information that we want to see rather than everything that's available. So in my employee information report, I currently have 1,060 employees that are visible to me. And for most users listening to this, you're going to have a much smaller list because you'll likely just have the staff assigned to your department and then assigned to you as timekeeper or supervisor or director. So filters will help people with large lists of names to be able to customize a report to get the information you want. So like we have one that starts with, so if we wanted to use that filter to start to find me as an employee, we've got starts with as the filter. And now we can start looking for Lewis. So when I type the letter L and hit enter, the report refreshes and we've gone down from 1,000 employees down to 73. So we're sitting pretty good now. We're closer to finding me as an employee, but it's still 73 people. We can add another letter to our filter. So anyone that starts with LO, that 73 goes to 16. And the more letters we add with the filter, the more specific that filter becomes in finding me. So now that I've added 3, we can now see, okay, there's Liz Moran. We can use multiple filters. So if I also wanted to use the starts with, and now we're every employee that starts with LOU and where the last name starts with M shows up. And these filters can be used basically in every column we can add to a report. We can do this to look or set up reports for multiple employees. Included in our filters is the word in, which means includes. So if I wanted to include every employee whose name is Lewis and Jamie, that would be 3 of us. Of the 1,060 active employees in Workforce Go, there are 3 people that meet this criteria. And you can continue to add employees if you wanted to build a report that just gives you information for certain people. And so this is how the filters work. So this is include. So I've got first name, comma, first name, comma, first name. And I could keep going this way to specify wherever it is I'm looking for. The filter works based on the type of filter you select and the criteria you enter below it, but it's also affected by the information you have access to. So if you worked in diabetes, you're not going to be able to see the tribal president on your list of employees. So it'll be limited to who's assigned to you. If for some reason you can see former employees, that might mean that the personnel office hasn't updated that employee's profile yet. So if you see a former employee, reach out to personnel to let them know they might not have done what they need to do so that their new supervisor, new timekeeper, new director can see that person. In addition to filters, another thing that's helpful in your reports is our help menu. So if you haven't had an opportunity to use that before, in the upper right corner, you have a question mark. When we click on that, a new tab opens. And it's the system documentation for WFGO. We have our categories. If you wanted to review based on the topic. Or at the bottom, there is a search button where we can look for keywords and it'll start to match what it is we're searching for. And then we can read or search for the things that we're interested in. And so when you click on it, it's just a detailed information about whatever topic you've clicked on. So when I clicked on time, it brought up 1,095 topics. And that's, of course, for anybody to use. It's a system documentation found by clicking the help button in the upper right corner. Another thing that can help us navigate WFGO is the search button. So when we have our little menu open, we have a little search button here. And if we wanted to look for employees' timesheets for current, if I type the hashtag or #, depending on what you want to call that, and start typing my name, this would direct me to the current timesheet for me. So this is a helpful way in going through the other options to look for timesheets. Type hashtag in the person's name, and then click on their name, and you'll be directed right to their timesheet. Saves you a lot of time. You can also do this by looking for old timesheets. So if we were interested in a timesheet from July 1st for me, I type in that date and type my name. This would take me directly to the timesheet for that period that has the date July 1st. So if we're researching for employee information or your own, a quick and easy tool to find when that timesheet was. You don't have to guess what pay period a certain day fell in, that kind of stuff. You can go right to there. And then the last part you can use this menu for, if we just wanted to find any time requests waiting for us, we don't want to click on the bell that has our to-do list. If I type the word pending, anything I have access to that has the word pending shows up. Pending timesheet approval, pending time off approval, pending overtime approval. And so you click one of those, and then of course the submissions that staff have waiting for your review would be there for you to review and approve. So some pretty handy ways of navigating around WFGO. And then the last thing before we're going to start exploring some reports, if you haven't used the system documentation tool, very helpful to me. When people ask me questions about why is something happening in Workforce Go, the very last thing you can use, or maybe the first thing you should use, is when you're in your information, open up help and then open up My Learning Classic. Depending on your access level, you have access to different job aids, as Workforce Go calls it. So if I click on Manager, it gives me a list of different topics of which I can find information for. Viewing employee timesheets, editing, time offs, schedules, time and labor, working with reports, general tasks, all these things available to us to be able to use at any time. So Workforce Go makes some documentation easily available to us to find information if we want to read about it or learn more about what we're looking for, or just in general about Workforce Go. So let's start with our home screen. Depending on if you've already customized your home screen, yours might look different than this. But on this screen, we can customize these boxes here called widgets. And so here we have some options. These two buttons allow us to make this information view either windowed or in a list view, so they're all like this. So that's one of the things we can do. The other is adding widgets. So there's a little add button here. And when we click widgets, it gives us a lot of information that we can use to add to our reports. My accrual balances, my benefits, my clock, my mailbox. You can have up to 10 of these things that are listed in your current widget view. So if I wanted to add my sticky notes, we don't use those, but I click on it and so it slides over. Or if there are announcements like the announcement we've seen when you've logged into Workforce Go this morning, we can add that. And once we're done, we click apply. And now there's my sticky notes and there's the announcements. And it works the same way to remove. You just click on this and click remove, and it goes back to available widgets, and then apply. So a pretty simple thing to use to be able to update or have some more information that you might find helpful to yourself. And the other thing we can do is adding links. So I have 7 links that helps me jump around Workforce Go quickly for stuff I do quick. Like I do a lot of password resets or updating people's security profiles. But this is something you can certainly use. But when you want to edit the links, you can modify this to be whatever you want. I included a link to Intact my reports for all the different reports I've created. But you can set an external link, meaning a website outside of Workforce Go. So you need the website link available, so it'll take you to it, or an internal link. If you wanted to create access to an area that you want to access more quickly, we could use that search button, of course. That works just as fast. But if we wanted to set an internal link to every time off pending approval that's added here, I can give it a custom name. And when I'm done, I can click save. So now when we come back out to home, there's that pending approval box that I added. So when I click there, it would take to any request for my approval for time off, but I don't have employees, so that'd be a blank report for me. All right, and if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat box and I'll address them as we go. So the first report I want to look at is the employee information report. So up in the left corner, of course, we all know at this point that this opens our menu for navigating WFGO. We have the star, which is our favorites, which are those links I've created for myself. So I can come right here and jump right to the different places I've saved. We have the single person or silhouette, which is our own information, your personal information if you're accessing WFGO, how we request time, how we look at our timesheets or submit them, submit change requests, that kind of stuff. And then we have the double silhouette, which is for your team. This is how you view information related to the employees assigned to you. And when we open my team, we have employee information. So that's where we're going to start. So most users likely have this as the default view, this type of report. The list of employees will be different depending on who's assigned to you. So this report might not provide a lot of information we're interested in. When we look at that, it just tells us there's an employee assigned to us, tells us if they're in payroll, which hopefully they are. Tells you if their account is locked out, yes or no, and then their employee status. So the default report only shows active employees. We can see the filter here. We discussed filters at the beginning. So anybody who does not equal terminated is listed here. So if there was other information we wanted to see, we have a couple options to us. When we click on the person and the little paperclip, it gives us some quick links for that employee. We wanted to go to their timesheets, to their pay statements, record history, pay statement history, the current timesheet. This is how we could do that. Great, easy, fast way to do that. But if there was information we wanted to be able to see anytime we came to employee information, we can start to build on this report. So on all these screens, we'll have this little ellipses that gives us the ability to take action. When I open that up, we have add remove columns. So I click there. The left side gives us a list of all available columns that we can add to this employee information report. The right side gives us everything that's currently selected. So we have information maybe we don't care to see. In payroll, locked, status, external ID. We'll checkbox them, remove them. And on this side, whatever other information we wanted to add. So maybe we wanted a column with director name. I have that selected, click apply, and now we can start to see who is assigned to an employee as the director. And I'm gonna use this filter to zero in on me. So now for me, we can see my badge number, my employee ID, and the badge number is the number I use to punch in at the clock. So if you have an employee who doesn't remember their 4-digit code as they're punching in before they give their thumb or fingerprint, you can always look that up right here at employee information. That's essentially what like IT would do if we forgot the 4-digit code. And so we have director. So here's the director assigned to me. Still pretty generic because if we're looking at our own employees, of course, we would expect that the director name to be either us or the director of our program. We can add our accrual profile. So I've gone back to add remove columns. The search box, you just type the keyword of whatever it is, and it'll tell you where that stuff is. So now accrual profile I added, so it appears on the right side. There's no other columns that I can add that has the word accrual in it. And so here we are, and I'll apply that. So now we know who my director is. We know that I'm a full-time employee that earns 6 hours of leave per pay period. And so maybe this is what we wanted to have for our reports, a list of our staff, who their director is, and the amount of leave they earn by pay period. And then we'll know if personnel's been keeping up with that accrual profile, so our employees earning the correct amount of leave. Now, if we don't save this report, the next time we come back, this isn't going to be there. It'll be the default report. So once we've added the information we want to get, and at the employee information, it's going to be everything related to the employee, like their information in WFGO. Once we've done this part, if we're happy with what we have, or we just want to make sure we don't lose the report we're building, at the ellipses, we have the ability to save this view. So we can give it a new name, new default view, whatever you want to call it. If you need to give it a description because maybe you're making multiple versions of these views that you can have ready to go whenever you need it, by all means do that. And I want to make this report my default, so the next time I come back to employee information, this is what's going to load instead of a different report. I'm going to run it immediately, so once I hit save, the same report's going to refresh exactly as we have it. You could share this report with other people. So if you're building this for a subordinate or your director, share that with them so they can have access to the same information. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Now we have this. Up here it says new default view instead of system. If I come here, I can change the view back to the system default or to others that I've made. If people shared a view with you, if you go to shared views, there'll be a list of them here also. So if you shared this with another employee, like your director or subordinate, that's how they would view the report you've saved and shared with them. So if I go to the home screen and come back to employee information, here's that new default view I've made. This will be the thing I land on every time. And so from here, you could add what their default cost centers are, their program, their funding source, their timesheet profiles, and all kinds of stuff about the employee that you'd want to see. That's important. Nice thing about this, of course, is at each of these little headers, you can choose how to sort this report. This report's sorted by employee ID. But when I put the cursor in here, we can see the up and down arrows. I can make it sort a different way. So if we had multiple people and we wanted to make sure it's all grouped together by accrual profile, we could use this as an option and then have it sorted by accrual profile instead of by the employee ID. You can also use this to change the settings. So if you don't want the report called accrual profile, you wanted it called something else. Now it's called leave instead of accrual profile. And then once we've modified that report, now we want to click Save View instead of Save View As. I'm using Save View because I want to save this change over the current view I'm using instead of creating another. So now every time I come back, leave is what that will say instead of accrual profile. So you can make that say what you want to something that's more meaningful for you. Especially some of the names from WFGO could be a little clunky, like for the default funding sources and cost centers. Some of that gets a little longer. Okay, so we'll move on from employee information. We're going to look at accrual balances. In the team area, of course, you'll have my team, you have time, accruals, and depending on your access, probably schedule. I don't know about benefits or HR and some of the others below, and then payroll. So you'll have accruals and you'll have balances. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. And my report's gonna run with something I created, so we don't have to see everyone's names and all that stuff. But when you click here, it's gonna give you a list of all the balances you have for the employees assigned to you. And that would be for all the different types of leave we use. So I created this just to show, to include annual leave and sick. If we left, just so it wouldn't take as long, with all the employees that comes up for me, the report takes a few minutes to run. But you'll include education leave, anything for a leave balance that we can accrue. You'll be able to see the leave type and then their balance. And then you can add accrue rate. So when we go to add remove columns, you can add a lot of information about the type of leave that you might feel is important to look at for your staff. So a lot of stuff about the employee, hours scheduled, hours taken, pending requests, pending days, who their supervisor is, timekeeper, all that good stuff. So probably at least 50 different fields you could add to the report for yourself. And this works the same way as employee information. Once you're able to add or remove columns, everything else in WFGO is basically the same thing. All works the same way. We can call our field whatever we want to call it. Add the information we want to see. Make multiple views. So if we wanted to make to build a report where if you're a program that runs 24 hours a day, and maybe you want to separate this by your day shift, swing shift, and grave shift people, create a view for each of those groups. That would just depending on the amount of work you want to put in to build the view. Or if you want one for just annual leave, then just sick leave and just education, you can do that too. Nice thing is once you have this down, you have the list of whatever information you want to look at. You have options here to view history. So if you wanted to look at the history of these leave accruals and then see this is every time somebody has earned leave or every time they've used leave, you have access to that, which would be helpful if you have a subordinate come to you and say, I don't think my leave balance is correct. Very easily by clicking that history button, you'll get an entire list of any instance of which their leave was changed, whether it's by using it or by earning it, or if someone from personnel modified the leave balance, you would see that too. Okay. I don't see any questions coming into the little chat box, so I'm gonna move on to our next report called Detailed Calculated Time. So a lot of us are familiar, of course, by going to our employees, going to time and maybe time and looking for all timesheets or current timesheets to find our employees' time. And of course, when we do that, we'll see a view just like this. So here's my timesheet currently. My raw hours is basically the default view of what you would see, but for you, it's going to be a list of the people assigned to you. Might not be very helpful unless we're clicking in to start looking at all the options we have. If we want to edit the timesheet, then we can start looking through. We don't see a lot of information from this view. And it's not going to be very helpful if we had 10 employees assigned to us. And now we looking at this, I'm not sure if a certain holiday has hit, or if there's team leave, or the hour late start that there was yesterday for the tribe. Has that all been assigned to our employees? This view doesn't tell us, and you're going to have to look at every single person individually to make that determination. But what we can use is a report called Detailed Calculated Time to find this. When we go up to our options and My Info, we'll have an area called My Reports. From there, we can open Time Reports, Calculated Time, and then Detailed Calculated Time. So on the left here, we can see all the little gray highlighted areas. Those are all the places I clicked. My Reports, Time Reports, Calculated Time, Detailed Calculated Time. So I've taken us here. All right, we have a question. What happens when they have leave without pay? Do they still submit a leave request? Yes. It would be optimal to have hours represented for leave without pay so that when your timesheets are being processed, it doesn't hold up the process when people are looking and saying, does this employee supposed to have 72 hours? Looks like they're missing a time entry. Because if we select leave without pay, it'll show 80 hours calculated, but only 72 would get paid if it were 8 hours of leave without pay. So it helps fill in information that might be missing and cause confusion later. Yeah, but they no longer get paid for leave without pay. So easier to start using it and fill in that information. So here we are looking at detailed calculated time. And when you land on this report, and likely you've probably never used that, you'll have a list of your people, and it's filtering for today. So I'm not an essential person, and neither am I scheduled to be at the office. And I work from home, so I'm not on the clock. So we don't see any punch-ins related to me. Or if I had requested leave today, we don't see that. And if the person who prepares my timesheet had added COVID-19 leave yet, we can see by looking at this that hasn't been done either. Yeah, we'll do that in a minute. So here we are for me, and not a lot of information, but hey, I want to show you how much better this could be than the last one, right? So we could take time entries, and now we get some options, more ways to customize our report, especially in areas with activity. There's a calendar range. We can choose from all these different ranges that WFGO provides. We could choose dates if we knew the dates that we want to look for. Easy enough just to change the from date to whatever day and the to date to the last one. We could choose by pay period, current, last, that kind of stuff. So let's look at the previous pay period for me. Here we are for the pay period, January 21st, as we can see up here, through February 3rd. Now we can see each individual day of my timesheet without having to view my timesheet and make that determination for whatever it is we're looking for. This report's a little longer, so let's slide it over. We can see the 8 hours and what the category is. We know that this is calculating to 80 hours, so if my supervisor or the program director was looking me up, great, we're happy LJ has 80 hours. He's not missing any of the COVID leave or whatever it would be. We can see the funding source that's been selected for that timesheet. For finance, easy, very easy. We only have one funding source. So there's the 8 hours, how it's assigned. So a nice, easy report. And if we wanted to include other people, there is a combination of me and Jamie's timesheets for last pay period. And so for Jamie on January 21st, you can see when she's on the clock. Must be the calculated lunch period. I don't know if you clock out or not. We don't see hours here, so that might be automatic. As you punch in, you punch out. And all the information that's calculating. Okay, so that's why we see the hours blank then. Good. And then her funding source that she's paid from. And then there's the unpaid lunch. But you could build a report just like this for all of your staff. Come here and check that out. Does so-and-so have this? Is there a certain day we're looking for to make sure that a form of leave like yesterday? Did all of our employees get the 1 hour admin leave for bad weather or whatever it would be? Nice, easy way to do that. And of course, now we don't have to view a whole timesheet. We just see this. So we can see Jamie punched in at 7:41, punched out at 5:01. On 121, her unpaid lunch was from 1 to 2. And then the time starts right back, ends at 5 o'clock. Even though she punched out at 5:01, rolled it backwards, right? And so you can see she started the day 5 hours on because the unpaid lunch happened at 1, and then 3 hours in the second half of the day. Calculated for the day at 8 hours. So this is the detailed calculated time report. You can see I made the view training default. There's the system one. I don't know what this one is. I've made 2 training views. Let's see what that is. Oh, okay, same thing. You could also add in this report, I think that's why I made this, employee default funding source and the time entry funding source. So if we have employees that might get paid from multiple funds, or we had switched funding sources by PA in the middle of a pay period, by having this report, rather than finding someone's timesheet and clicking through all the days, I can look right here and see, are these the 2 same funding sources? My default one, this is what's assigned to me. My time entry, this is what's on the timesheet. So if they didn't match, because we changed funding sources in a pay period, this would be an easy way to see, oh darn it, I didn't fix LJ's timesheet for the last 3 days or whatever period that they didn't match. And now I can use that to fix and correct. So great for viewing and comparing employee time entries for any period of time you specify. You want to do it by day, by pay period, whatever is easiest for you. Modify this report to include your time off categories, calculated hours, raw hours, funding sources, all that good stuff. So we can identify potential anomalies of our staff. And again, the only people that should be available for you to view here are the people assigned to you. So if I transferred to adult corrections today and Jamie's working on my timesheet, she can't find me, Jamie is going to know I need to contact the personnel office because we have a new transfer, LJ, and he still can't, his information can't be seen in Workforce Go by me. So let's contact them and get that corrected. Or if I left adult corrections and now I'm in finance and Jamie can still see me. Personnel, you haven't removed LJ from my access yet. So this is a good report to use. One, obviously, because we can do all this. But another thing you want to keep in mind is when payroll is processed. So last week, payroll was completed, let's see, by 11:30 a.m. on Friday. Maryland was complete with payroll. 11:30 on Friday. So if we had an employee whose paycheck said 42 hours, and then we come to this screen and we see what we're looking at here, 80 hours, we're going to want to say, Workforce Go messed us up. His timesheet clearly said 80 hours, but his paycheck said 42. Or it's Maryland's fault, whoever's fingers we're going to point at. But she finished payroll Friday at 11:30. So whatever your timesheet said when she finished payroll is what you get paid for. And so we make an adjustment afterwards because I didn't have time to do my timesheets on Thursday or whatever the issue is. We'll have a mismatch. Of course, Maryland does probably a neighborhood of 60 to 70 corrections every single pay period to adjust for timesheets not submitted timely. So be careful with that when looking at this report and then expecting it to match a paycheck. Because if we did our time after payroll was processed, we could end up with the mismatch. That also tells us the anomaly, right? We were good up to this point, and then we adjusted our timesheet after payroll got processed. And it's all Maryland does when someone tells her there's an issue with someone's paycheck. All right, we have a few more minutes, so I'm going to look to add something to my dashboard. We're going to go to employee information. We have the last view I created. It's got leave hours here. So we'll add 2 employees just so we can see this. So we've got our two people. I better save the report. And maybe, of course, we might have a longer list of employees than this. We want to build a chart that's going to include how many people have leave by 6 hours or 4 or 8, depending on the employees we have, right? Right here is this little picture of a dog-eared paper. View data, view charts, charts and data. So these are some things I had made in the past. And we can create a chart. And that's using this information that we can see. So I have the options of badge, director name, employee ID. So we're going to use employee ID. Chart type, do we want it as a pie chart? All right, let's use a pie chart. And we're going to count. And this one's going to count employee IDs. So we have one person with employee ID 40 and one person with employee ID 1401. If that's not what we wanted to see, we can always come here and change the categories. So let's go to leave. Easy to do. So we have one person who earns 8 hours per pay and one person who earns 6. So if we had more employees, obviously the count would be different, or we might have a third category to add here. But now we have this to rely on to be able to add to our dashboards at the home screen. So here's the title, row count by employee ID. Try to give it names that we can make sense, because the default name they're going to like Workforce Go basically uses the same format. And I accidentally hit the back button, so I left the screen. So I'm going to give this a name different than row count. Call it new report training. Save it. Title has changed. So now when I come to our home screen, I can add this report to my dashboard. So I have this now. I want to add a report or a chart. It's going to list all the different things I've done. Saved as, name, all that good stuff. And so now we just have to find the report with the name that I saved. We have new training view, new default view, all these different types of reports. Still don't see what I've saved. We have 2 tabs up here, one for report, one for charts. I want to add the chart, not the report. So here it is, new report training. And there's my pie chart for the number of people who earn leave by whatever category. And of course, you can do that as with whatever information you want. This is kind of safe information to use for the video. And so now anytime you come to your dashboard, I have my clock, how many days till I get paid, and now how many people in that report I built of 2 people, how many earn 8 hours of leave, how many earning 6. So if you had 20 employees, have a much more interesting pie chart than this one. So once you've created a chart, is where you can go to report charts, either add a report that you want to see, or if you've created a chart, go to your chart side and then add that information. Select your report and then apply it. All right. So I'll make a recording of this available. I'll send that out once I've had time to save and upload this report or this video to YouTube. And I'll send you guys a copy of the slide deck I've been using off screen. It has detailed step-by-step instructions on all.